comment?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Jim Finney, Elko Cap. We had a long discussion on this particular item. The board voted to oppose this particular regulation as a board. And if I may, speaking as an individual, I think that if we were to take the smokeless powder, the electronic sighting device, look at those as separate issues without trying to combine all of them, we may be more successful in accomplishing what I think the commission is trying to accomplish. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment in Elko?
No further comment, Mr. Chairman.
We'll move to public comment in Reno.
Yes, we have comment in Reno.
Hi, my name is Mike Keeney. I am a 22-year resident of Washington County, Nevada. For the record, I am an NRA member. I am also the Reno Sparks, one of the Reno Sparks area NRA ILA election volunteer coordinators. My comments here today are not in part or having anything to do with the NRA. I am here today as an individual. I just need to get that on the record because of my association with the NRA ILA. I have several issues that I want to discuss here. I don't have any issues with the smokeless powder ban. I don't have any issues with the changing of the wording with the handgun. But I do have two issues having to do with the use of technology and electronics as they are just coming into existence. This is the very beginning of this technology. My particular concern in this area, I would go on the record as saying that I do not ever want to see something, a situation where somebody can place a weapon out in the field and then go home and sit in a nice warm cabin and hunt by remote control. But what I am concerned with is things, and I appreciate that the game warden, I'm sorry I didn't catch his name, but he did bring up the wounded people or handicapped people trying to hunt. I am a handicapped person, and I can see the use of this technology as it is right now is only in its infancy, but it is going to get better. For example, there are circumstances where technology such as electronic sighting systems and trigger control could be used by, per se, a wounded warrior that has no arms and legs. And I appreciate that you have gone on hunts with people there, but I'm afraid by making regulations such as these, you are going to limit the abilities of these people, and a lot of these people are folks that came out of the Midwest and even here in Nevada that hunted all of their lives, and they have been horribly mangled by the ravages of war. And what you're going to do is you're going to make sure that some of these people do not have an ability ever to hunt by enacting this particular aspect of this regulation. I would propose that you amend the wording to make an exception for handicapped people, because I can see a lot of uses for technology going forward, especially in things like sighting for people who are visually impaired, where you can use a much larger screen connected to a Wi-Fi scope, and that gives you an ability to accurately catch an animal. The other aspect of this technology is, and you were talking about the tracking point device.
Mike, I hate to interrupt you, but we're at your 3-minute time limit. Could you wrap it up real quick for us?
Nobody told me I had a 3-minute time limit.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I should have been more clear on that. It is posted on the agenda, but could you wrap it up real quick, and I'll give you just a few more seconds.
Well, I want to talk about the 50 BMG thing. That is the main reason why I'm here. So if I could on that,
I'm sorry, Mike. I gotta cut you off because that's if we let it go, it's got to be for everybody, and we're gonna try and keep it orderly today.
I think that's grossly unfair. I am a member of the public. I buy hunting licenses just so that I can support hunting efforts and conservation efforts in the state of Nevada, and I have something to say.
I'm sorry, Mike, but that's the rules that we've set, and we're gonna go by them today. So next public comment in Reno.
Yes, my name's Rex Flowers. First, the Coalition for Nevada's Wildlife. We hope that we would pass CGR 458 on all parts except for center fire cartridge length and the restriction to the 50 caliber work rate. Now speaking on behalf of myself, I would hope that you'll pass this today and strike out of IV the words "or larger than caliber 50 for a center fire cartridge with a case length of more than 3 inches. Listening to a lot of what's been brought up, we had discussions about fair chase, long range hunting, unnecessary waste of game. These are ethics that you don't regulate, they're taught, they're learned, they're mentored, and that's where they should stay. There's been comments made by commissioners about the public safety for game wardens. I think these are unfounded. Today I'm hearing public comment or comments made about receiving public comment from people who are out of state or not, who did not apply for tags within the state, and yet they're commenting on how we're going to regulate hunting. It didn't seem to me there was any problem when we had individuals sending in comments from out of state and out of country as to our having a bear hunt or having tracking issues. So there should be no problem with any individual sending in any public comment on any item before the commission. So again, I would hope that you will strike that language and pass the rest of this regulation so that we can get on to other things. Thank you.
Thank you, Rex. Next public comment in Reno.
No more comment in Reno, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Moving to Las Vegas, public comment in Las Vegas.
Is the mic on?
Yep.
Thank you.
Could I have your name for the record?
Yes, sir. For the record, my name is John Ridgeway, 3519 One Nation Avenue, Las Vegas, Nevada, 89121. I'm here to speak on agenda item number 26 in reference to General Regulation 458. I've got just a couple of questions on the third change that's mentioned in this agenda item. And you want to have restrictions on the caliber and also the magazine length. Number one question, is there an existing problem? And number two, are there any studies to show that these changes would be effective and obtain the desired results? Now, on the sideline, you have a lot of commercial industry out there like, oh, we got to sell the greatest sporting rifle and this, that, and the other. Okay. Well, you could have a possible effect on commerce with this also if you just restrict and don't allow for new developments. I've seen on the internet where, some people are experimenting with larger caliber and different powder charges and things of that nature to obtain some good effects. So anyway, please don't restrict the commerce and the innovative ideas, and also please indicate what problems this will fix and what studies indicate that this change will actually be effective and successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ridgeway. Next public comment in Las Vegas.
Hi, Vernon Brooks for the record. The smokeless powder change is good. That seems like an improvement. Caliber and case restrictions feel arbitrary. I'd like to know why this particular decision was made to draw the line right here. Why it wasn't slightly this way or slightly this way. Why was this picked? From everything I've read, arguments about wasting of meat are unfounded. I haven't seen or heard any arguments based in science or reality that confirms that there's any wasting of meat. Is this solving an actual problem that we're seeing in the field? Is there an actual problem happening that we're trying to fix here? Are we trying to get out ahead of something? If so, I'm open to hear that. I came here specifically with no comments written down because I wanted to hear the arguments first. So all of this came up after I listened to those comments. Does this commission take it lightly that the NRA is in opposition to this? I would think the nature of this organization is such that by and large we probably should find ourselves coincidentally in alignment with the NRA's position on these things, as we are largely the same people. At least that's my impression. If the NRA is against this, we should not take that lightly. Obviously, that's how I found out about it. That's why I'm here. I do have concerns that this opens a door that, and maybe this has been considered, maybe it hasn't. I'm cautious to use the slippery slope argument, but I don't think it can be ignored either. The slippery slope argument in this case is twofold. One, if this is the restriction that we place today, what is it tomorrow by the next set of commissioners? Second, once these cartridges no longer have a valid hunting use in Nevada, we're just a little bit closer to that rifle having no reason to exist in Nevada, and why don't we just ban it? Which is, I know, the argument that we will hear from my opposition. Earlier the comment was made about people, many people from out of state sending in comments. We do sell non-resident tags, right? I thought so. Finally, the comment was made about, not finally, but on this issue, the comment was made about looking up names and seeing if those people are actively hunting. Some of us currently don't have time to actively hunt, but still want to secure the right for our children. That's why I'm standing here. Finally, I was not aware of the issues regarding electronically controlled rifles. I came in, I just found out about that earlier today, came in with an open mind to hear both sides of that argument. Again, I come back to, are we solving a current problem? I understand the desire to wanting to get out ahead of things, but are we solving an actual problem right now? Or are we possibly running the risk of stifling an innovation that, like was earlier mentioned, an adaptive technology for the handicap, but otherwise stifling the development of these technologies?
Mr. Brooks,
Yep.
you've reached your 3 minutes. Could you wrap it up? If you have any
Perfect timing, I'm there.
If you have any further comments, please submit them in writing to
Yep,
us.
we're there, I'm good.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is James Muhlenberg. I'm here representing myself. There's a few things I want to speak about, but mainly it's going to be on the case length restriction. I've worked in the firearm industry for the last 3 years. I've seen ammunition restricted and ultimately banned on a national level. That's kind of what brought me here today, and I've learned some great facts. I really appreciate having the ability to speak here. This is the first time I've done this, and I'm excited. But really I want to get down to is I do not want to see the banning of 50 BMG, whether it be for hunting or any other caliber, the banning of 50 BMG or any other caliber here in Nevada for hunting purposes. There are no ammunitions that should be banned for hunting. It kind of goes back to the waterfowl cartridges. It is up to the hunter to make a humane, safe harvest and choose whatever tool the hunter feels is appropriate. The game warden up here earlier did a very good job speaking on some points on the 50 BMG and other cartridges. He is wrong, however. History has taught us once you start restricting certain types of ammunition, it does become ultimately an outright ban. He said how devastating the 50 BMG is, but did not show us one piece of evidence where 50 BMG has used or has been used for hunting in Nevada and has had a negative outcome. Instead of evidence, he brought a bottle opener. It was a good piece of evidence to see the actual size of what a 50 BMG, but it doesn't show the ultimate effect it has on the potential game that will be harvested with it. We as free citizens do need 50 BMG to hunt with if we choose to, and or use it as a dual-purpose rifle to protect ourselves from a military police in case they become tyrannical. This is a Second Amendment issue. Mr. Johnson, you brought up some great points earlier. Hopefully I kind of answered some of them for you, and I'm very happy to answer any questions that I may be able to. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Muhlenberg. Next public comment, Las Vegas.
William Wood of Las Vegas. I'm here in opposition to the amendment to limit long
Can you
range.
speak in the mic, sir?
Sorry. I'm here in opposition to the amendment to limit long-range hunting rifles. I have found that most guys that argue against the use of long-range rifles are from the old school, where you have a rifle with a medium to low-grade optic and a duplex reticle. They zero an inch high at 100 yards or something of the like and go afield. Most of the shots come within the 100 to 200 yard range, but if they do happen to have an opportunity at that trophy animal at longer ranges, they use Kentucky windage and raise the duplex reticle slightly over the back of the animal and let it rip. Maybe they hit, maybe they miss, maybe they wound the animal. And don't get me wrong, I have much respect for the shooters who can effectively employ this method of shooting. However, how many times do you suppose that animal gets wounded and they never find it? The entire body of meat is lost. Now, let's contrast that with a guy with a modern scope and an accurate rifle. He zeroes his rifle at 100 yards and can print a half-inch group at 100 yards. He has many times engaged targets much smaller than the game he is hunting, out to 1,000 yards. He goes out hunting and is prepared whether the encounter happens up close and personal or at a distance. When he ranges the animal, takes a wind reading, he then manipulates the turrets on his scope, takes the shot that he has taken many times on smaller targets. He then takes the same shot as in situation number one. Which do you think is more ethical? The guy that's using Kentucky windage or the guy that knows the ballistics of his rifle and dials for the shot he has taken many times? As far as the wasting of edible meat, that has more to do with the shooter's ability and the situation that the shot is being taken in, more than the caliber of the rifle. I have personally shot a mule deer in Montana with my Barrett, which seems to be the target of this proposal. I hit the deer in the neck at 650 yards. Not a piece of meat was wasted in that shot. I also shot a mule deer in Montana with my 30-06. I hit the deer a little further forward than I had hoped, took a close shot around 70 yards offhand. The bullet tore through both front quarters and left the majority of that meat unusable. So there are two examples, one taken with a clean shot with a 50, no meat loss. One with a very popular hunting rifle, major meat loss. Last season in Nevada, I employed a 375 Chi-Tac on a cow elk hunt. The area in question is a wilderness area which prohibits vehicle access. I spotted elk from the edge of the wilderness area about a mile from my position. I placed the 375 in my pack and hiked towards the elk. I made it to 952 yards where I took the shot. Again, it was a shot I had made many times with the rifle, and I knew it to be capable. Hit the elk behind the shoulder, and it exited high behind the other shoulder. All of the tissue damage was between ribs and very minimal. Backstraps, shoulders, and all other edible meat was used. As far as the argument that is unfair or gives the hunter using it an advantage, I would say this. Place a 26.5-pound rifle in your pack, hike it into some country where elk and mule deer live.
Mr. Wood, I hate to interrupt you, but you're at your 3 minutes.
I'm just
And I
about
do
done.
know that you're reading it because I received your email and I've read it.
Okay.
So if you would submit that to the recording secretary, I know the commission has received what you're reading to us.
Okay.
I appreciate the comment.
Could I finish with this last paragraph?
I think we're gonna have to stop right there. Like I said, I've read what you've got there, and I know my fellow commissioners have it. So
Okay.
I appreciate the public comment, though.
Very good.
Thank you.
Should I submit that afterwards or right now?
You can give it to her right now. It's fine.
Chairman Wallace, Director Wasley, and Commissioner, for the record, my name is Julius Fortuna. I'm the Conservation Director for the Nevada Firearms Coalition, and we represent 35,000 Nevada firearms owners, and we're the state chapter for the NRA. I respectfully like to ask for my 6 minutes. We represent a full group, and there's been a lot of communication on this on our social media. The current primary objection for our group to the commission is based on current regulations of NDOW and policies. NRS 501-105 directs the commission to establish policies and adapt regulations necessary for the preservation, protection, management, and restoration of wildlife and habitat. It's within this authority, and it's important for the public to know, there's 3 primary reasons to enact regulation. The first one is proposed regulation should be based on scientifically documented data and justifies the new regulation will improve wildlife or its habitat, prevent negative effects on wildlife or its habitat, and protect public health and safety. We strongly object to the proposed regulation banning the 50 calibers, which is the only portion of this rule that we object to. The first 2 we do not object to. The information presented to justify the regulation simply does not meet those 3 criteria, at least from our perspective. The department, along with the associations of state wildlife and agencies, have been concerned for many years, and there's been studies done to determine the number of hunters is declining. In ways that reverse this trend, they're trying to figure this out. The number of hunting regulations increases each year, while the number of hunters is declining. It doesn't take a scientific study to realize that hunters don't want nor need more rules to discourage participation in this sport. This is especially true of regulations that are not grounded in scientific or documented facts upon the perception. And perception is the key word. Heard it a couple times today. Perception, as publicly elected officials, is the perception of our constituents. And the constituents are important. And often, perception is reality. The Nevada Firearms Coalition and the majority of our cabs, let's not forget that, the majority of our cabs clearly oppose this regulation. Set all else aside but those 2. There is a clear case against this. Our group does not want any further ban restrictions on legally owned firearms to hunt in Nevada. And by the way, the record long shots are not with 50 calibers. They're with 338 Lapuas and those calibers. So the slippery slope thing is really true. What is next? If it's truly a long range issue, the 50 caliber is not going to prevent that. There's other calibers that meet the criteria not set in this regulation that could do the same thing. So we respectfully ask the group, especially the group here, the commissioners that are representing sportsmen, to vote no on this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Fortuna. Further public comment in Las Vegas?
Hi. First time I've done this. My name's Leo Aguilar, for the record, right? I'm a disabled Navy veteran. I just found out about this meeting like not even a couple hours ago. I decided to come to it because I saw y'all had a ban against the electronic systems. Well, I'm a Navy veteran. I'm disabled. Sorry, I have problems talking in public. So it says that the electronics will be banned. I have a disease called hereditary spastic paralysia. Eventually, I'm gonna lose my legs, and I'm also gonna lose my arms. I was raised hunting in Texas, and I feel like this is eventually gonna take that away from me. Sorry, this is really emotional for me because I grew up hunting with my grandfather. I really don't want this to pass because I've seen technology advancing, and it gives me hope that eventually, even though I won't have arms or legs, that I'll be able to use electronic systems to still be able to continue on my grandfather's legacy of hunting. I'm also against the ban for centerfire ammunition, merely because I don't know of any actual problems that we're having on the field. Also, that's all I have. Sorry.
Thank you for your testimony, and most importantly, thank you for your service.
For the record, Paul Dixon, Chairman, Clark County Cab. This, as you well know, we've been discussing now for an extended period of time on the commission and had a lot of public comment back and forth. Several things just to go through the 3 main change areas here. As far as the language goes for the regarding electronic rifle triggers, If you read section 5A right now as it stands, it says it's unlawful to hunt big game animals with any firearm that is equipped with a sighting system using a computer or electronically controlled firing mechanism. I thought when we've had all these discussions, it was and, not or. And I gave this as a comment back in our thing. And the point being is that we wanted to have a system that you couldn't use, because we have electronic scopes out there. And the way that it's written now, it seems to me you're going to start restricting things where we wanted to have a system that couldn't aim and shoot. So it would be an and, not an or. And so my recommendation is that if you're going to stay with the electronic thing here, you go with the and piece rather than or for that, for 5A there. For the smokeless powders, Clark County, this has been brought up as Blackhorn. I mean, this is probably 4 years old, I think, or 3 years old. We had testimony. The Clark County CAB has always supported no restriction against the smokeless powders, and we continue to have that position. And finally, on caliber and cartridge length, you've heard a lot here, and I think Julius Fortuna mentioned it and others. We don't have any clear evidence that using a larger caliber impacts wanton waste of meat. We don't have any clear evidence that if it's long range, that you don't want people shooting. The 50 caliber is clearly not the only weaponry that you can use for this. And so having those discussions at Clark County, and we've had them over time, in the past we've had split votes. We actually had a unanimous vote this time because there's so much ambiguity. It comes down to an ethics question. And the question comes is, should this commission be asking an ethical question for taking long range shots or other things, and by restricting caliber length? And so the Clark County CAB came in with a recommendation to not have any restriction on caliber length at this point in time until there's justified evidence that people are doing stuff in long-range shots in this state that are causing unethical, causing behavior like wanton waste, or we're doing things where we're not at fair chase. And I think you heard discussion. Anybody that can shoot over 700 yards, and I'll put this out there, is somebody who's military trained. In fact, when I was at the shooting range 2 weekends ago here at Clark County Shooting Park, they have 25 benches. When I went there to sight in my rifle for a deer hunt coming up in October, I was the only 300 short mag there. Every other rifle there was a military rifle on the benches. Nobody else was shooting anything there, whether they were sporting or practicing for hunting, but I was the only basically classical rifle sitting, in my viewpoint, there target practicing on a Sunday morning. And I believe with all the military engagements we've had lately and stuff, the military rifle rounds have not only been used, but brought back in from all the people who've done that to this society and been made part of our general usage, sporting as well as hunting for a lot of people. I see a lot. I asked several guys, and they were going to be hunting with their ARs. And so it's just a different world than what I grew up in, and it has to be with the younger people bringing things in. So I would ask this commission to look at what the CABs have recommended, understand what we're trying to regulate when we go to cartridge length, what are we really trying to solve. I agree with Commissioner Johnson. I don't think it's a Second Amendment right. I think it really comes down to a question of ethics, and can we actually regulate ethics here? Because when if you're trying to regulate ethics for long-range shot, just banning the 50 caliber is not going to get you, because there are other rifles that shoot out at that distance. I mean, the 308 was forever a sniper rifle for things up to 1,000 yards. And, most hunting situations, I don't think people are shooting at things over 1,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Further public comment in Las Vegas? Hearing none, I'll bring it back to the commission. Questions or comments by the commission? We'll start down here with Commissioner Hubbs.
Yes, I do have a couple questions. This is actually pretty complex for me to go through this, and I too respect our constitutional rights, and I do take it very seriously if we would ever be deemed to be restricting any of our constitutional rights, for sure. But just researching the size of, or the caliber, the 50 caliber that we're talking about, so that was derived from military use for piercing armored vehicles, from what I could find. And I did too find that the amount of foot-pounds of energy while shooting the 50 caliber is nearly 5 times that of the rifles that have been used, but that it's very good at long-range shooting as well in terms of accuracy. So in some respects, there could be, it could be argued that they could be safer for long-range shooting. It was horrible, but I did force myself to watch some of the videos online to see what it was like to shoot an animal with that type of caliber, and that was not fun for me to do. But I'm really struggling. What I didn't get was a lot of general comments from the public who don't hunt right now. It was the hunters that were upset this time. And so I do see that I don't believe this is a huge problem out in the field at this time. Otherwise, I believe I would be getting a lot of comments from angry citizens that are upset that hunters are out there desecrating our wildlife, and that's not what I'm getting. But to answer, I think it was Mr. Brooks' question, I think this may be something more proactive in nature. But my question is, when I was watching videos as well, it seemed like it was a very difficult gun to control. I mean, grown men were having trouble with the kick, when they were trying to shoot. And they said that there could also be ramifications for safeties in terms of like it hitting something and bouncing back ricochet shots and things of that nature. And I just wanted to ask about that right now.
Chief Turnipseed.
You bet. Thank you, Chairman Wallace and Commissioner Hubbs. I suppose the argument could be made for safety issues. I've not specifically heard that argument from anyone in the public. There is a fairly famous YouTube video about a ricochet coming back and hitting a guy, knocking his earphones off or something, but theoretically that could happen with any rifle, big or small. And I think you're right, as far as hearing about this going on in the public right now, I've not ever checked anyone in the field with a BMG. I've reached out to some of my field wardens. In Ely, I'm hearing about it being used on some elk hunts. And of course there are YouTube videos. There's one or two of some deer and antelope in Nevada. One of our wardens in the western region heard of an antelope in Unit 041, 042 that was shot with a 50 BMG at a couple hundred yards and blew the right side shoulder off. As other people pointed out, a lot of meat damage issues have to do with shot placement. If it goes clean through and through the ribs, probably not going to damage any meat. If it goes through the shoulder, clearly it is going to damage meat. The bigger the higher the terminal velocity or not terminal velocity, but the terminal ballistics, essentially how hard it hits that animal is going to determine how much meat is damaged if somebody shoots one through the shoulders. Clearly 10,000 foot-pounds of energy is going to do a lot more damage than 2,000 foot-pounds of energy. But as folks pointed out, if you shoot an animal through the ribs, it probably doesn't matter what you shoot it with. It's not going to damage any of the meat, being the forequarters and the back straps and some neck meat. So back to your question on the safety ramifications, I've not specifically heard that brought up as a reason for this, but I suppose it is an issue. And I think you're right. Some of this talks about getting out in front of things that are coming down the road. We've been hesitant in the past to make regulation on new technologies, and there's a continuum of social acceptance in which, when a new technology first comes out, a lot of hunters say, "Oh, that's ridiculous. I would never use that. That's not fair chase. That's not hunting." 10 people start using them, 100 people start using them, 1,000 people start using them. You read about them more and more, and after 10 years, it's become the norm. So I think we've been hesitant to make regulation in the past on some of those new technologies, and it became socially acceptable over the years. And I think some of these things are about getting out in front of those new technologies. Did I skip all around your question without answering it, or did I answer it?
No, you did. I was wondering if there were other safety issues for taking those out in terms of other hunters in the area. If somebody was shooting a gun that had a 50 caliber, would it potentially harm somebody, or what's the risk out there? I know it's getting more crowded out hunting at times, and so I just didn't know if they were unsafe. Just thinking that it was used as a military rifle, and as Commissioner John